My wife served me divorce papers. At my dad's funeral, said she'd waited long enough, didn't react. 3 months later, her lawyer found out everything was in a trust. My dad set up before he died. She'd signed a waiver without reading it. What's up, Reddit? So this happened over the past 6 months, and I'm still processing how badly my soon-to-be ex-wife screwed herself. Buckle up because this is a long one. I'm 34, work as a senior network engineer for a tech company. Decent salary, about $140,000 a year, built my career from the ground up, starting as help desk support. My dad was a retired contractor who built custom homes for 40 years before selling his business 5 years ago. Smart guy, always told me to protect what I worked for. My wife Emily is 32, works part-time as a yoga instructor, makes maybe $25,000 a year teaching classes at a boutique studio downtown. Met her at a friend's party, thought she was cool at first, independent, had her own thing going, didn't seem like the type to care about money. That changed about 3 years into the marriage. Started small. Comments about how her friends' husbands took them on better vacations. How so-and-so just got a new luxury SUV. Why weren't we upgrading to a bigger house in a better neighborhood? I made good money, but I wasn't stupid with it. Maxed out my retirement accounts, kept 6 months emergency fund, invested the rest. The house we lived in was a nice 3-bedroom my dad helped me buy before we got married. Mortgage was only $180,000 because dad fronted half the down payment as an early inheritance gift. Emily hated that the house was technically mine. We'd had it appraised at $520,000 2 years ago, and she'd started dropping hints about adding her name to the deed. We're married, what's yours is mine anyway, type of talk. I always deflected. Something in my gut told me not to do it. Her best friend Vanessa was pure poison. Divorced twice by 30, constantly in Emily's ear about how I was financially controlling, because I didn't let her spend whatever she wanted whenever she wanted. We had a joint account for household expenses that I put $4,000 into monthly. Emily contributed maybe $800. She also had her own checking account for her personal money. But somehow me not giving her unlimited access to my accounts made me the bad guy. Vanessa would come over, drink my coffee, sit on my couch, and lecture me about modern marriage. How couples should have complete financial transparency. How real men don't make their wives ask for money. This coming from someone who was on husband number 2's alimony and already eyeing husband number 3. I should have seen the warning signs earlier. About 4 years into our marriage, Emily started this thing where she'd compare our life to everyone else's constantly. Her cousin bought a beach condo, why didn't we have one? Her coworker's husband bought her a new BMW for her birthday, why was I so cheap? Never mind that we took 2 vacations a year, and I'd bought her a perfectly good Lexus 3 years prior. The entitlement ramped up gradually. First it was suggesting I should pay for her student loans since we were married. Then it was wanting to redo the kitchen even though there was nothing wrong with it. Then it was pestering me about getting a lake house as an investment property. Every conversation turned into how we should be spending more money on things she wanted. I'm a practical guy. I grew up watching my dad work himself to the bone building his business. Saw him go without so he could invest in equipment and inventory. Watched him save every possible dollar. He taught me that wealth isn't about showing off. It's about security and freedom. Emily never understood that. The breaking point with Vanessa happened about 6 months before everything blew up. She was over for one of her weekly girls' brunches that always turned into Emily coming to me later with some new demand. This time, Emily wanted $15,000 for a business investment in Vanessa's new essential oils pyramid scheme thing. It's not a pyramid scheme, Emily insisted. It's network marketing. Vanessa's making 6 figures. Vanessa's lying. Show me her tax returns. You don't trust me to make my own business decisions? I don't trust Vanessa to not scam you out of 15 grand that we'd never see again. We fought for 3 days. I didn't give her the money. Vanessa started posting vague things on social media about toxic men and financial abuse. Emily stopped talking to me for a week, sleeping in the guest room and generally acting like I'd committed some unforgivable sin by not funding her friend's obvious scam. The silent treatment lasted 9 days. 9 days of her slamming cabinets, huffing dramatically whenever I entered a room, and making pointed comments to Vanessa on the phone loud enough for me to hear. Finally, she broke the silence to tell me I was emotionally stunted and incapable of supporting her dreams. Her dreams apparently involved losing $15,000 on scented oils. That's when I noticed Emily getting real close with her phone, tilting it away when I walked by, stepping outside to take calls, changing her passcode from our anniversary to something I didn't know. Classic signs, but I didn't jump to conclusions. Maybe she was just being petty about the essential oils thing. Then Dad got sick, pancreatic cancer. Diagnosis to death in 4 months. Fastest and most brutal thing I've ever watched. My dad went from this strong guy who could still frame a house at 70 to a skeleton who couldn't walk to the bathroom without help. I spent every evening at his place after work. Took vacation days to drive him to appointments. Moved him into our guest room the last month so I could take care of him properly. Emily complained about it constantly. Said it was disrupting our life, and she didn't sign up to be a caregiver. He's my dad, and he's dying. Where else is he supposed to go? A facility. That's what they're for. We fought about that too. She actually tried to guilt me about the cost of his medications and supplies, like I was supposed to just let him suffer to save a few $100 a month. The medications alone were running about $800 even with insurance. Emily acted like I was personally bankrupting us by keeping my father comfortable in his final weeks. We're supposed to be saving for our future, she said one night, while Dad was asleep down the hall. Not spending everything on someone who's already lived their life. I stared at her like I'd never seen her before. That's my father you're talking about. I'm just being practical. You're always the one talking about being practical with money. There's practical, and then there's heartless. Guess which one you're being right now. She rolled her eyes and went to scroll on her phone. That moment right there should have told me everything I needed to know. Emily barely spoke to Dad during his last month. Would leave the house when nurses came by. Made excuses not to help with anything. I'm talking about a man who'd been nothing but generous to her for 9 years. Who'd helped us with the house, who'd welcomed her into the family, and she couldn't even sit with him for an hour. Dad noticed. Never said anything, but I could see it in his eyes. The disappointment, the understanding. He'd always been good at reading people. Built a successful business partly because he could tell which clients would pay and which would flake. Which subcontractors were reliable and which were trouble. He was reading Emily the whole time. 2 weeks before he died, Dad called me into his room when Emily was out at one of her yoga classes. He'd been having a rough day, barely eating, struggling to stay awake for more than an hour at a time. But when I walked in, his eyes were sharp and focused. Son, we need to talk about something important. He looked serious. Not sad dying dad serious, but lawyer meeting serious. Emily's gonna leave you. I started to protest, but he held up his hand. That same gesture he'd used my whole life when he needed me to shut up and listen. I've seen it before. Watched my partner's son go through the same thing. Wife was sweet as pie until his dad died, then filed for divorce 6 months later, trying to get half of everything, including the inheritance. Your mother saw it too before she passed. We talked about it back then. Worried it might happen to you someday. Mom died when I was 19. Cancer as well, different kind, but just as brutal. Dad never remarried. Said Mom was it for him, and he wasn't interested in replacing her. I don't want that happening to you, he continued. So I set something up with my attorney about 3 years ago, when I started noticing how Emily looked at assets instead of people. Everything I'm leaving you is going into a trust. The house, the vehicles, my investment accounts, everything. You're the sole trustee and beneficiary. Emily can't touch any of it in a divorce? Dad, I don't think she'd... Let me finish. The trust was created before your marriage. Well, technically, it was created 9 years ago, right before you introduced Emily to me. Call it father's intuition. It includes the house you're living in now since I fronted that down payment. Technically, I owned half until last week when I transferred my portion into the trust. Your name's on the deed, but the trust owns the controlling interest. Same with the 2 rental properties you didn't know I owned. Same with the $740,000 in investment accounts and the paid-off truck in my garage. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck myself. $740,000? What rental properties? Saved my whole life. Lived below my means. Invested smart. The rental properties are over on Elm Street. 2 duplexes I bought in the 90s for nothing. They've been cash flowing for 20 years. Paid off now. Together they're worth about $760,000 and bring in $3,400 a month after expenses and property management fees. It's all yours now. Well, it's the trust's now. Works the same way. My head was spinning. I knew Dad was comfortable, but I had no idea he'd accumulated this much. Why didn't you ever tell me? Didn't need to. You were busy building your own life, your own career. I was proud of that. Still am. But I'll be damned if I let some yoga instructor who can't be bothered to sit with a dying man walk away with half of what took me 40 years to build. He coughed, a wet rattling sound that made me want to call the nurse. But he waved me off. Emily's gonna freak when she finds out, I said. Dad smiled, looking more alive than he had in weeks. That's the beautiful part. Remember that paperwork I had you and Emily sign when you bought the house? The quitclaim deed transfer stuff? I remembered. Dad had refinanced something or transferred some ownership thing, needed our signatures to make it legal. We'd sat at his attorney's office and signed maybe 6 or 7 pages of documents. This was about 5 years ago, maybe 6. That wasn't just a quitclaim. Hidden in there was a beneficiary waiver stating that Emily acknowledged she had no claim to any assets transferred from me to you, in life or in death. My attorney buried it in the legal language on page 4. You read the whole thing because I told you to specifically check pages 3 and 4 for the liability clauses. But Emily just signed where we pointed. Didn't read a single word. Even initialed 6 different sections without looking at what she was initialing. He actually chuckled, then coughed again. My attorney said it was the most ironclad waiver he'd ever drafted. Spent 3 hours making sure every word would hold up in court. Emily can't touch anything that came from me. And since the house is technically owned by the trust even though your name's on the deed, and your cars are titled under a trust-owned LLC, and the 401k I'm leaving you goes directly into the trust structure, she gets nothing but whatever's in your joint account and her own accounts. Well, that seems almost cruel, Dad. No, son. Cruel is refusing to help care for a dying man because it's inconvenient. Cruel is complaining about medication costs while I'm trying not to scream from pain. Cruel is already planning your exit strategy while your husband is watching his father die. I'm not being cruel. I'm being protective. There's a difference. He reached out and grabbed my hand with what little strength he had left. If Emily really loves you, this won't matter. She'll stay regardless of money. If she's what I think she is, you'll find out real quick after I'm gone. Either way, you're protected. That's all a father can ask for. What if you're wrong about her? Then I'm wrong and you've got a nice safety net for your future. But I'm not wrong. Watch what happens in the next few months. She's already checked out, son. I can see it. She's just waiting. He died 13 days later at 4:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was holding his hand. Emily was asleep in our bedroom and didn't even come out when the hospice nurse called time of death at 4:19. I had to go wake her up to tell her Dad was gone. Her response? Okay, I'm going back to sleep. We'll deal with everything in the morning. No tears, no hug, no comfort for the man who just lost his father. Just rolled over and went back to sleep. I sat with Dad's body until the funeral home came at 6 a.m. Held his hand even though it was getting cold. Thanked him for everything. Promised I'd be smart with what he left me. The hospice nurse, this older woman named Dorothy, who'd seen everything, patted my shoulder and said something I'll never forget. Your wife didn't come out? I shook my head. Then your daddy was right to protect you. I've seen this before. Some people see death as an opportunity instead of a loss. You watch yourself now. The funeral was that Friday. Nothing fancy. Dad hated fuss. Small service at the funeral home. Maybe 40 people. Then burial next to Mom at Riverside Cemetery. I gave a short eulogy about Dad's work ethic and his kindness and his wisdom. Few of Dad's old contractor buddies said some words. His former business partner gave a speech that had everyone laughing through tears. The whole thing took 90 minutes. I held it together pretty well until they lowered the casket. That's when it really hit me. Both parents gone. Last connection to my childhood, to my history, to the man who taught me everything about being a man, disappearing into the ground. I'm not ashamed to say I cried. Emily stood next to me, dry-eyed, checking her phone twice during the burial. We're at the reception afterward at Dad's attorney's office. They had a conference room set up with sandwiches and coffee, some cookies, basic reception stuff. Very low-key, exactly what Dad wanted. I'm talking to Dad's business partner about some properties they developed together back in the day when Emily walks up with this look on her face. Not sad, not sympathetic, determined, almost excited. She's carrying a manila folder. We need to talk, she says quietly but firmly. Now, in private. I excuse myself and follow her to an empty office down the hall. She closes the door behind us, and before I can even ask what's going on, she opens the folder and I see the words, Petition for Dissolution of Marriage, at the top of the first page. I'm filing for divorce, she announces. No preamble, no emotion, no buildup, just drops it like she's telling me she's running to the store. I've waited long enough to do this. Didn't want to upset your dad while he was sick, but he's gone now, so here we are. I just stared at her. We're literally at my father's funeral reception. People are 50 feet away eating egg salad sandwiches and drinking coffee at my father's funeral reception, and my wife is serving me divorce papers. You're doing this now? Today? I wanted to do it 6 months ago, but Vanessa said it would look really bad if I left while your dad was actively dying. So I waited, but I'm done waiting. You can look those over and give them to your attorney. I've already got mine. What attorney? Get one. You're gonna need one. I'm asking for half of everything. The house, the cars, your retirement accounts, all of it. 7 years of marriage entitles me to half of the marital assets. She actually smiled when she said that last part. Not a sad smile, not an apologetic smile, a satisfied smile. Like she'd been planning this moment for months, and it was finally happening, and she was thrilled about it. You've got this all figured out, I said slowly. I've been talking to Patricia for 3 months. She's the best divorce attorney in the state. She says I have an excellent case. You make almost 6 times what I make. I'll probably get spousal support too. That's when it clicked. Dad was right. He'd called it perfectly. Understood, I said. Took the folder, didn't open it, didn't flip through the pages, didn't argue or yell or beg her to reconsider. Just took the folder and walked toward the door. Her smile faltered. That's it? That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? Most men would be upset right now. Angry. Something. You made your decision. Nothing I say is going to change that. You're not even going to fight for us? I turned and looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman I'd been married to for 7 years. Who I'd built a life with. Who I'd trusted completely. And all I felt was tired. You just served me divorce papers at my father's funeral. You didn't come out of the bedroom when he died. You complained about his medication costs while he was in agony. You're standing here right now telling me you've been planning this with an attorney for 3 months while I watched my dad waste away. What exactly is there to fight for? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I walked back to the reception, put the folder in my car, finished talking to guests, shook hands, accepted condolences about Dad, thanked people for coming, went home that evening and slept in the guest room. Emily was shocked I wasn't devastated, kept trying to start fights about it over the next few days. Don't you want to know why? Not particularly. I'm serious. Don't you want to know what you did wrong? I'm sure you'll tell me eventually whether I want to hear it or not. You're impossible. Most men would be begging right now, trying to fix things. I'm not most men, and there's nothing to fix. You made it pretty clear this is over. That made her furious. She wanted drama, wanted me broken and begging, wanted the satisfaction of me falling apart so she could feel justified in her decision. Instead, I was just existing around her, like a roommate I was mildly annoyed with. She tried a different approach. You're going to regret this. When you're alone in this house, you're going to wish you'd tried harder. Maybe. Or maybe I'll be relieved I don't have to deal with someone who sees my father's death as the opportune moment to cash out. Her face went red. That's not what this is about. Then what's it about, Emily? Explain it to me. Why serve me divorce papers at his funeral? Why wait exactly long enough for him to die before filing? Why spend 3 months planning this with an attorney while I'm grieving? She didn't have an answer. Just stormed off to the bedroom and slammed the door. Monday morning, I called Dad's attorney, Leonard. Told him about the divorce papers. Good, he said without hesitation. Your father predicted this almost to the week. He told me to expect it anywhere from the funeral to 2 weeks after. Come by tomorrow at 2, and we'll go over everything. And do not, under any circumstances, tell Emily about the trust until after her attorney files all the initial paperwork. Let her make all her calculations based on incomplete information. The bigger the shock later, the better. Tuesday, I met with Leonard at his office. Brought the divorce papers Emily had given me. He looked them over and actually laughed. She's asking for half of everything. The house, vehicles, retirement accounts, even half of any inheritance you receive. This is beautiful. She has no idea what's coming. He walked me through the whole structure. The trust was airtight, created 9 years ago, months before I even met Emily. Every asset Dad owned was in it. The house I lived in was technically owned by the trust, even though my name was on the deed as primary resident, because Dad's down payment had established partial ownership that he'd transferred into the trust structure the month before he died. The waiver Emily signed means she acknowledged she has zero claim to any assets derived from your father, transferred during his life or after his death. She can't argue she didn't know because the document explicitly stated what she was waiving. She just didn't bother to read it. We have her signature and initials in 6 places. What does she actually get? Whatever's in your joint accounts at the time of separation. Her own accounts, her personal property, her vehicle, that's it. The house, your vehicles, the investment accounts, the 2 rental properties, all of it is trust property that she waived any claim to. The trust also protected your 401k contributions made during the marriage because you were making those contributions from income derived from trust-managed assets. I don't understand how that works. Your father was exceptionally thorough. He had you restructure your employment situation 3 years ago. Remember when he helped you set up that consulting business for tax purposes? Said it would save you 15 to 20% annually? I did remember. Dad had introduced me to his accountant who set up an LLC for my freelance network consulting work. I made maybe 15,000 to 20,000 a year doing side projects through it. Dad said it was smart for tax liability and retirement planning. That LLC is owned by the trust. Your employer pays the LLC for your consulting services, and the LLC pays you. Your primary employment income flows through a complex but legal structure that technically makes it trust-derived income. Your 401k contributions came from that income. It's creative estate planning and tax strategy that Emily's lawyer is going to absolutely hate when she discovers it. This seems extreme. Your father watched a lot of good men get destroyed in divorces, including his own business partner. He spent 40 years building wealth and he wasn't going to let someone take half of it just because they stuck around long enough to collect. Emily will get whatever's in the joint account, which I'm guessing is what, maybe 8K or 10K, and she can keep her Honda. That's it. The joint account had about $8,200 in it at the time. Emily's car was a 2019 Honda CR-V worth maybe $18,000 with the $12,000 loan she still owed on it. What happens now? You need a family law attorney. I'll refer you to my partner Diana. She's handled cases like this before. She'll file a response to Emily's petition, and we'll see what happens when discovery reveals the trust structure. I hired Diana that same day. She looked at everything and actually smiled. This is some of the most thorough asset protection I've ever seen. Your father clearly knew what he was doing. Emily's going to think she's getting half of everything right up until discovery reveals the trust. Then it's going to get very entertaining very quickly. I don't know if entertaining is the word I'd use. Trust me, women who serve divorce papers at funerals because they couldn't wait one more week deserve exactly what's coming to them. I moved into the guest room permanently. Emily strutted around the house like she'd already won the lottery. Started shopping more, charging stuff to her personal credit cards. Came home with designer bags and new clothes. Talked loudly on the phone with Vanessa about how she was going to finally be free and how I was going to regret how I treated her and how she deserves someone who appreciates her. I never treated her badly. I just didn't fund unlimited spending and refused to bankroll her friends' pyramid schemes. She even started redecorating, talking about what she'd do with her half of the house money once it sold, how she was going to get a nice condo downtown, maybe travel for a while, take that trip to Europe she'd always wanted, all on my dime, or so she thought. I said nothing, just watched her build these elaborate fantasies about her post-divorce life. She hired Patricia, this aggressive attorney known for taking men to the cleaners in divorces. Very expensive, very cutthroat, very successful. Patricia sent Diana a letter within 2 weeks demanding I immediately vacate the marital home and begin paying temporary spousal support of $3,500 monthly during proceedings. Diana's response was a masterpiece of legal language that basically said, client will remain in his home as he is the sole legal resident and deed holder. Emily is a guest who may vacate at her convenience. No temporary spousal support will be provided as client disputes any obligation. Attached, please find documentation regarding asset ownership and marital property classification. That attachment was the trust documents. All of them. The formation papers from 9 years ago. The transfer documents. The beneficiary waiver Emily had signed. Emily called me at work 2 days later, absolutely screaming into the phone. What the heck do you mean the house is in a trust? What trust? You can't just hide assets in a trust. Patricia says that's illegal. I'm not hiding anything. My dad created that trust 9 years ago, before we even met. Everything he owned went into it. That's illegal. We were married. Anything you inherited during the marriage is marital property, not when you signed a waiver giving up any claim to it. What waiver? I never signed a waiver. Yeah, you did. About 5 years ago, at Dad's attorney's office, when we were signing the paperwork for the house. You might want to look at page 4, right above where you initialed 6 different times. Silence on the phone. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. What documents? I don't remember signing anything like that. The quitclaim and beneficiary documents for the house transfer. Dad's attorney has the originals with your signature. Diana has copies. You signed in 6 different places and initialed next to each clause. It's all documented. More silence. Then her voice got smaller. I didn't know what I was signing. That's not really a legal defense, Emily. You're an adult. You signed legal documents without reading them. That's on you. She hung up. Called back an hour later with a completely different tone. Crying now. The victim routine in full effect. This isn't fair. I've been your wife for 7 years. I gave up opportunities for this marriage. I deserve half of what we built together. You do deserve half of what we built together. That's the $8,200 in the joint account. You can have half of that, $4,000, plus your car that you're still making payments on. That's what we built together. The house is worth over $500,000. I've lived here for 7 years. The house was my dad's investment that he let me use. You signed a document acknowledging that you had no claim to anything transferred from him to me. Should have read before signing. You tricked me! This was planned. You and your dad planned this to screw me over. No. My dying father protected me from exactly this situation. He saw you coming from a mile away. Predicted you'd file within a week of his death. He was off by 4 days. She completely lost it. Started screaming about lawyers and judges and how she was going to take me for everything. How I was an awful person. How she was going to make sure everyone knew what kind of man I really was. I let her scream herself out. When she finally ran out of steam, I said very calmly, "You done? Good. Don't call me again." All communication goes through attorneys from here forward. Hung up and blocked her number. Patricia tried every legal maneuver she could think of over the next 6 weeks. Challenged the trust formation date, claiming it was fraudulent. Challenged the waiver, claiming Emily signed under duress. Demanded financial discovery going back 15 years looking for hidden assets. Subpoenaed Dad's attorney, demanding to know if the trust was created specifically to avoid marital property claims. Diana demolished every single argument. The trust was formed 9 years ago, with a notarized creation date and filed with the state. Completely legal and predated the marriage by months. The waiver was signed in an attorney's office with a notary present and no evidence of any coercion or duress. Emily had been given time to read the documents, been offered the chance to have her own attorney review them, and had voluntarily signed. Financial discovery showed exactly what Diana said it would. All major assets owned by the trust, minimal marital property. The rental properties were especially devastating for Emily. She'd had absolutely no idea they existed. Dad had bought them in 1996 for $85,000 each, paid them off over 15 years, been collecting rent quietly for decades. They were now worth about $380,000 each, and generated $3,400 monthly in rental income after management fees and maintenance costs. All trust property, all protected by the waiver. Discovery also revealed Dad's investment accounts. The $740,000 he'd mentioned to me had grown to about $890,000 by the time everything was liquidated and transferred into the trust after his death. Emily's attorney tried to argue that inheritance received during marriage is marital property under state law. Diana shut that down immediately with case law and the beneficiary waiver. Emily explicitly waived any claim to assets transferred from the deceased, including but not limited to inheritance, gifts, and property transfers. She cannot now claim she deserves half of an inheritance she contractually agreed she had no right to. The judge agreed. 2 months into the divorce proceedings, Patricia withdrew from the case, sent Emily a bill for $28,400 and told her to find new representation because the case is unwinnable and I don't take clients to trial when I know they're going to lose. Emily tried to represent herself for about a week before reality came crashing down. She'd been living in the house rent-free while the divorce processed, but Diana filed for exclusive possession and the judge granted it. Emily had 30 days to vacate the premises. She called me from a different number, crying and begging. "I don't have anywhere to go. I can't afford an apartment on what I make. Please, give me more time. Give me something. You should have thought about that before serving me papers at my dad's funeral. I made a mistake. I'll withdraw the petition. We can work this out. I still love you." No, you don't. You loved what you thought you'd get in the divorce. Big difference. Please, I'm begging you. You're begging now. Where was this energy when my dad was dying? Where was this when you were planning this with Patricia for 3 months? Where was this when you handed me those papers at his funeral reception? Silence. That's what I thought. You've got 30 days. Start packing. She moved in with Vanessa. Started working full-time at the yoga studio, plus picking up evening shifts at a health food store to make rent on Vanessa's apartment. Posted sad quotes on social media about betrayal and men who hide their true natures. Vanessa posted long rants about the legal system being rigged against women and how family courts favor men with money. I posted nothing. Just lived my life. Went to work. Managed my properties. Started actually enjoying my house again, without someone constantly complaining about something. 3 months after Dad died, the divorce was finalized. Emily got $4,100 from the joint account after splitting it 50-50. Her CRV with $12K still owed on it. Her personal belongings. and a very expensive lesson about reading legal documents before signing them. Total time married, 7 years. Total assets she left with, about $22,000 in vehicle equity and cash, minus the $28,400 she owed Patricia, putting her about $6,400 in the hole. What I kept, the house worth $520,000, 2 rental properties worth $760,000 combined, $890,000 in investment accounts, Dad's paid-off truck worth $45,000, my 401k worth $180,000, and the satisfaction of watching someone who tried to financially ambush me during my grief walk away with essentially nothing. Emily tried one last manipulation at the final hearing. Showed up dressed in all black like she was in mourning, gave this whole speech about how I'd changed after my dad died and become cold and calculating, how she'd hoped I would grieve and heal and become the man she married again, how she still loved me but couldn't reach me anymore. The judge looked at her filing timeline. You filed for divorce the day of the funeral, while he was actively grieving. Your sympathy seems remarkably selective, ma'am. I was trying to give him space to process his grief without the pressure of, by serving him divorce papers at a reception with 50 witnesses? Let's not insult the court's intelligence. Petition granted. Assets divided per the prenuptial waiver signed by petitioner on May 14th, 9 years ago, when trust structure was established and explained to both parties. Nobody explained anything. I was tricked. This whole thing was designed to steal from me. You signed 6 pages of legal documents without reading them, including initialing next to clauses that explicitly stated what you were waiving. That's not being tricked, ma'am. That's being negligent with your own interests. We're done here. Bailiff. Next case. I walked out of that courthouse feeling lighter than I had in years. Like a weight I didn't even know I was carrying had been lifted. Vanessa tried one last act of revenge about a week later. Posted this long rant on social media about how I'd abused and manipulated Emily for years, how I'd stolen her future, how I was a narcissist who illegally hid assets to avoid his responsibilities. Diana sent her a cease and desist letter threatening a defamation lawsuit with damages. The post disappeared within 90 minutes. Vanessa's social media went dark for 2 weeks after that. Emily sent me one final text from yet another new number. I hope you're happy. You destroyed my life. You took everything from me. I hope you can live with yourself. My response: you destroyed your own life when you thought you could profit from my grief. The only thing I did was let you face the consequences of your own choices. Also, stop contacting me, or I'll file harassment charges. Block that number too. 6 months later, I'm doing great. The rental properties cash flow beautifully, basically paying my entire mortgage and living expenses. The investment accounts are growing steadily. I got a promotion at work that bumped me to $165,000. I'm dating a woman named Sarah who's a physical therapist, makes great money on her own, and has never once asked me what I'm worth financially. We split dinner checks, and she actually argued with me last week about paying for her own movie ticket. Complete breath of fresh air. Ran into Emily once at a grocery store about 4 months after the divorce finalized. She looked rough, tired, stressed, older than her years. Working 2 jobs to afford splitting rent with Vanessa will do that to a person. She tried to approach me in the produce section. Can we just talk for a minute? Please? No. Kept walking. Didn't look back. Didn't feel bad about it either. Last I heard through mutual friends, she's dating some guy who works retail at Best Buy and lives with his parents at 35. She posts pictures on social media, trying to look happy, but everyone who knows her can tell she's miserable. Vanessa's apparently on husband number 3 now. Some older guy with money, who'll probably wise up eventually when he realizes what he's gotten himself into.